So TV. I'm your host, the friendly neighborhood music-loving Frog. In today's episode of 1 Hour Challenge, I'll be exploring Chopin's Fantaisie-Impromptu. Now, before I begin the challenge, I wanted to review the rules really quickly. Now, I will choose a piece that I have not practiced before, and I will learn it in 3 different practice sessions of 1 minute, 10 minutes, and 1 hour, and in between each of those, I will play through the piece. Let's get started! So I have finished wrestling with one very uncontrollable book, and I shall begin the 1 minute session. So it's actually a surprisingly comfortable piece under the hands. Like, some pieces kind of fit smoothly, you know? And I feel like it's one of them. So hopefully this shouldn't go too badly. But then again, I don't think I will say too much else, just in case I jinx myself. Okay, so that was an interesting run, I guess, because later on when I kind of got used to the pattern, it wasn't so difficult. But before I did that, somehow, sometimes my brain seemed to go a little faster than my hands could. And I feel like I probably chose a tempo that is a little bit too much for the time being. So that did kind of mess me up, unfortunately, on the first page. But after that, it got better. So I have high hopes, to be honest. Don't want to set the hopes too high though, because the higher they are, probably the easier it is to be let down. But I'll go and I'll kind of work with it as it develops, I suppose. Okay, now to the 10-minute session. actually a pretty nice point to close, I guess. Interesting. So I feel like it's actually going on pretty well again. But somehow there are always these little couple of places that are super, I don't know, they keep on tripping me up. So I honestly don't know exactly how well it'll be going because I know I need some time to iron those places out. But as a net, actually not too bad. Sometimes the rhythmic element is a little bit difficult, but I think it's more like one impulse than anything else, like maybe like a gust of wind or something that blows past your head. But I think it's actually really interesting if you consider like the colors and stuff that you can get, and sometimes it's easy, I guess, to kind of just blow past all the runs and stuff because it kind of goes under the hand, as I said. But I feel like it's a lot more interesting to kind of bring out the nooks and crannies in the line, but definitely it's a little hard to retain them because sometimes that comes from kind of practicing it and then imprinting the shape that I want into it. So I might have to go a little bit slower on the first couple of times around until I kind of eventually get the hang of it, hopefully, by the end of the 1 hour session. So that's my long-term goal, I guess, sharing my my battle plans. Okay, I'll try and hopefully the page turns aren't going to be too much of a pain. Alright, let's go. Okay, couple of things. First of all, dang, I underestimated that part. Like, somehow, I don't know what exactly it is, but something's not working out. I'll probably have to go over there and try and see if I can like ingrain my fingering or something, because sometimes it's like tripping is partially the fingering, and sometimes it's just probably the mind moving faster than the hands can, and that I can solve with practice. More concerning though, I think, is probably, since it's time, for 1 hour, it's time to consider all the big things, how things kind of are going to fall into place, what I want to do for like, how sections and how they're supposed to melt together. And I think it's more, I personally like to choose a more kind of a coloristic route, if that makes sense. I'm not so much interested in like hearing every single particle as maybe kind of getting the feeling that the harmonies and intricacies of the line provide. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that I'm going to like erase all the details or anything, and I do feel like maybe my pedal was a little bit on the heavy side, so I'm going to have to experiment with that, of course. But it's mostly just kind of seeing if I can finally get that sound that I want, which probably comes with practice again, and then also figuring out, because the nature of it's not like a super tightly structured piece. Like some pieces is kind of like the composer does everything for you, like everything is, in place in terms of the structure of the piece. You have like, not that it's not structured, but somehow like everything's a little bit more clearly defined. And this one I feel like if I don't control everything well enough, or like if I don't find a good way to kind of balance out mostly the proportions, but also like how am I going to make it interesting every time around, it kind of tends to become like a spineless blob somehow of jelly mush. And while some techniques and stuff kind of work while I'm doing it piecewise, I feel like now is probably the time to consider what I want to do for the piece while considering all the different structures and how I need everything to piece together, because otherwise some things just don't work. Like the transitions between the agitated section to the middle section. Like not even considering like technical difficulties such as just getting the notes straight. How do I make everything in the middle interesting enough? Because it's not like there's a ton of, thematic material or whatever. To me, it's probably just like 2 or 3 central phrases, so to speak. And there aren't even that many like rhythmic variations. I don't think there are any harmonic variations at all, really. So that's going to be a challenge to face, I guess. Like, for a deceptively simple sounding piece, there are quite a couple of things that need to be done. So I'm going to have to try out a couple of different techniques, maybe, like seeing if I want to change up some characters or something, or just think of adding a little bit of something new, because it sounds a little bit too much the same in some areas. But I think I know pretty much what I have to do. Okay, 1 hour session, let's go. Actually, I feel like part of my technical problems in this section, like the agitated section, probably comes from my left hand. Like the left hand doesn't really look like anything, but maybe because sometimes it's the things that go unnoticed usually that trip you up. And I guess if I don't really go over the left hand properly, it'll probably continue to contribute to all sorts of different problems based on experience. So I'll see if I can just quickly sort all that out first in the left hand and see if that makes a little bit of a difference, hopefully. I feel like I'm probably overindulging a little in those phrases. And I feel like I finally know what's going on. At least it's just a hypothesis, but I'm hoping this is it. I think something to do with those bars is probably not only the left hand, but the way I try to lean in physically. So maybe if I don't drop as far or like put so much weight into it, it won't mess up so easily. I think what is interesting is how all of the phrases seem to kind of lead into one another. I feel like it's probably because of that, because of the rest right before, but there's also kind of a danger, I suppose, in always just going on like that, because sometimes then you kind of trample the breath beneath, the hurried feet, which is also super important to retain, because otherwise it just sounds like one big, massive, hurried, blob. But it's also kind of difficult not to give into that impulse. Why are there so many things about this? Like, it's not just about kind of the phrasing or the shaping or the breath, but it's also how everything works together. And that is one huge mess. Somehow it kind of reminds me of this Chopin. But it's so hard to get the control and the degree right because I want it to be like a whisper, but at the same time everything has to be more or less clear. So nothing too labored. Of course, I can't ignore the little hairpin marks in the left hand. You know what? I think I probably should do a change of pace and move on to the middle section before anything else, because I have to solve the problems between the sections too. I feel like a large part of the difficulty is kind of balancing out the different facets of the piece. Like every note has to have importance, but not so important that the whole piece is littered with notes, because that's kind of a danger, especially when basically it's running 16ths throughout probably 2/3 of the piece. How do I give each note weight without making it burdened? And obviously I also need this thing to fly free, but not too free, because if it's absolutely wild, then that kind of, it's no longer agitated. Anything that's uncontrollably wild is never agitated. So I feel like this piece actually, well, I mean, definitely every piece needs more than 1 hour to complete the full bloom cycle. But I do feel like beyond this, it still needs quite a bit of work, and I honestly don't know how much of what I'm doing right now will stick to the end. So I'm just kind of lobbing things at the wall and hoping that it'll stick. But I've got another like 34 minutes left, so hopefully that should be about enough for me to kind of hammer in a couple of things. Still, that part is still so tricky. I don't know what's going on. But at least I think I've solved that thing in the middle with the different characters and stuff, just like assigning a new feeling probably to every one of them, and of course this. Figuring out the fingerings too. And in general, just kind of continuing work on the first section, because I feel like personally for me that's probably the slightly more problematic section of the two. But like the second section, the B section is definitely still super complex in its own right, even though it's not all that technically difficult to speak. Well, okay, so I have basically covered everything I want to cover, which is a rare thing, I guess, but a good thing. And hopefully, when I play it, most of the stuff sticks. Of course, I'm not expecting everything to, but it'd be nice if it did, honestly. And hopefully, that ironing kind of, smoothed out all the technical parts, and hopefully, I also managed to settle in some of the musical details that I wanted to do. Alright then, the product of the 1 hour session, the last run. Let's go! Alright, well that is all for today's video. Thank you, I hope you liked it. Please remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell down below so you can be notified of all my latest videos. I hope to see you next time. Bye!